Welcome to today's webinar, Designing Mission Soil Living Labs from Policy Priorities to Practical Approaches. My name is Kinga Sepielak and I work at Kraków Technology Park and I will be your moderator for today's session. Thank you very much for joining us, and it's a pleasure to welcome so many participants today. And before we begin, I would like to go through a few practical points. And next slide, please. Okay, first of all, today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording is going to be available online after the event. So don't worry if you miss something or if you would like to watch it again later. And during presentation, please keep your microphone muted. And if you have any question, please write them in the chat box at any time during the webinar. We tried to answer as many of them in the end of the webinar in Q&A session or during the presentations directly in the chat. And thank you very much for helping us keep the session smooth and well organized. And next slide, please. Before we continue, I would also like to mention that this webinar is organized within SOILL-Stepup project founded by European Union under the Mission Soil program. And the opinion shared during today's presentation are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the official position of the European Union or the European Research Executive Agency. And the webinar materials are shared under a Creative Commons license. And now let me briefly introduce today's speakers. So next slide, please. And we are very happy to have today 4 excellent experts with us. First is Taylor Erbor, Research and Innovation Coordinator from IFOAM Organics Europe. Then Sergio Pellegrini, researcher from CREA from Italy. And our third speaker is Nikolaos Toumasis, soil scientist from Cranfield University in the United Kingdom. And finally, Karen Gallagher, portfolio officer from Climate Kick. I would like to thank all of our speakers for sharing their expertise with us today. And now let's have a quick look at today's agenda. We're gonna begin with small introduction. Then we move to presentation about Mission Soil Living Labs, state of play and policy relevance and expectation. Then we move to 2 technical presentations focusing on the topics covered by the current Mission Soil calls. And later, Karen will present practical support available for applicants through the SOIL project. And at the end of the session, we will have a Q&A and some wrap-up and useful information and next steps. Okay, and we can continue. Probably many of you are preparing application for these topics, and today's webinar is designed to help you better understand what is expected and how you can strengthen your proposal. Please remember the deadlines. Because the second stage will close on 15th of September 2026. And also there are some will be additional topics and opportunities in 2027. So next slide. And new calls will cover additional biogeographical regions as well as new thematic priorities, including eurotrophication and carcinogenic substances in soil. And next slides, please. Okay, if you want to learn more about the Mission Soil Call topics, you can visit SOIL webpage, or you can check the work program from Horizon Europe. And now let me briefly introduce the SOIL project. And next slide. Okay, and we can move forward, yes. Okay, and SOIL project is the support structure for soil living labs, and its main goal is to support the growing network of Mission Soil Living Labs and lighthouses across Europe. And we can go forward. Yes, we can see that we start with the SOILL-Stepup in 2024 and 25. Now we are in the middle, so in the SOILL-Stepup project, and later we will continue our mission with SOIL Scale Up. And next, yes, and the project brings together partners from many countries and provide practical services that help living labs become stronger and better connected and more effective. And SOIL also supports supports organizations that are preparing application, which is why today's webinar is organized. And the project has four main objectives. First, to support existing mission SOIL living labs through training, networking, and practical tools. Second, to help future applicants prepare strong proposals and successfully join the mission SOIL network, and also to engage the wider soil health community by sharing knowledge and good practice, and finally to build a collaborative European community where different stakeholders can work together to improve soil health. And as you can see, soil is much more than a project. It's a long-term support structure for everyone working on the soil health. And the next slide. Here you can see all the services provided by SOIL, and this include, for example, training, in-person or online, engagement events, mentoring, help desk, access to useful information. I'm not gonna focus in detail about this because Karen later will present you this more, how to say it, in detail. Okay, and now we can continue. And as you can see, SOIL works with different groups, for example, with Mission SOIL Living Lab and Lighthouses, Emerging SOIL Living Labs and Lighthouses, with also applicants, that's we are here meeting today. And the next one. Okay, and here you can see that before we move to first presentation, I would like to remind you that today's webinar is not only one, and we have more of the trainings that you can access directly from our web page and from the SOIL Hub. And also we have the first webinar for applicants in March, and it's available online. And you can also check it because there is some very informative presentation from representatives from Research Executive Agency and from DG Agri. And next slide. Okay, and now I would like to introduce our first speaker. And today, Taylor is going to have a presentation about Mission SOIL Living Lab, state of play, policy relevance, and expectation. So, Taylor, floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. Yes, you can move to the next slide, please. So what I'm going to do in this presentation is zoom out a little bit at first. And so the title mentions policy relevance and expectations, but I do want to say that the expectations part, I think, is going to be quite well covered also by the speakers that come after me. So I'm really just focused on setting up the how the policy landscape currently looks and what's expected in terms of addressing some of these aspects in the proposals to strengthen them. So really zooming out, the mission SOIL is one of the 5 EU missions that you can see here, and there are also links between them. You just saw Kinga presented the 2027 call that has actually it's a joint between the cancer and mission cancer and mission SOIL. So this is why it's important to keep in mind the big picture. Next slide. And just very briefly, I think everyone here is probably aware, but Mission SOIL was launched in 2021, and this main goal is it's the objectives are going to be brought about mainly through living labs and lighthouses, and I'll mention these other policies in the coming slides. So you can go to the next. There are 8 specific objectives, and these are things that should be at least one, but ideally a few or several will be being addressed in your potential project or by your living labs. And the I won't go through all of these, but I think the key is to identify what's relevant in your area and your context and to convincingly show that you have plans to address them, that being ambitious, but also very specific and realistic. And you'll hear more about that from the other speakers as well. Okay, next. So the four main building blocks of the soil mission are the research and innovation, the program, the living labs and lighthouses, this network for real life sites for co-creation, testing, demonstration, and scaling up. And then there's the soil monitoring aspect, so trying to harmonize the uh, the measurements, the data, so that we can measure the progress and identify where we're at in different regions, different contexts, as well as the communication and soil literacy component, where ordinary citizens need to know more, yeah, more commonly that the importance of soil, so that they will support the types of products, practices, groups that support this, and that could include you all and the work you're trying to do. Okay, next. So where we're at, the sort of state of play of the Mission Soil Living Labs is we now have 9 ongoing projects and that encompass 45 living labs total, more than 500 experimental sites and living lab and lighthouse sites. And you can really get the details of that on the Soil website, or by browsing the 2025 Mission Soil catalog that came out later last year that has details about the current living labs. And yes, this there's quite a nice balance of organization types involved, and so you that's another important component to make sure that you're setting up what in is the definition of a living lab being a true multi-stakeholder type of initiative that where all those partners are involved in a meaningful way. So next slide. And just to mention, as part of that, the website and the Soil Hub has a nice atlas where you can cruise around and see on the map and have where the living labs are at and have a quick link to more information about them. So this could be useful as well in terms of connecting with others and just for reference in going forward. Okay, next slide. So now getting into the policy landscape and where mission soil, where living labs sit. I'll go in the next slides into the key policies um, that you can really look to be aligning your parts of your proposal with and the specific work. So the the European Green Deal still the big overarching 2050 target for climate neutrality. And this includes the biodiversity strategy, farm to fork, the forest strategy, and water resilience strategy is one of the most recent. Also, zero pollution action plan, where soil is a key part of all of these things. I think it won't be news to anyone here the importance of soil for carbon sequestration as that it's a living thing. So it's habitat for microbes and macrofauna and provides really resilience is and a long-term sustainability if you have healthy soils for that relate to all of these aspects. And the EU soil strategy is officially under the biodiversity strategy. And you can go to the next slide. So this is a graphic from the EU soil strategy, and they kind of nicely show all of the policy areas where that soil underlies or connects in this, and that is a good. This document is may be helpful to reference also for getting ideas and thinking of how you can emphasize or align ways that you're contributing to this. And just the slide on farm to fork and the organic farming target. So some of the key targets of farm to fork are written here, such as yeah, reducing nutrient losses by 50%, chemical use of chemical pesticides, and the promotion of organic farming. So, as representing IFOAM Organics Europe, I can definitely stress that if you have organic partners and sites in your living lab, I still think very much seen as a positive and something to emphasize because yeah, the EU has recognized organic farming as one that can really promote some more sustainable ways of managing a whole agricultural production system. And so I would encourage the organic partners to really go for it and to emphasize those aspects if you're using and researching, innovating with organic methods. Okay, next slide. So a little bit on the most relevant law has come to us recently. It was actually passed late last year. Is the soil monitoring law, and I have quite a number of slides. I will go pretty quickly because people can reference it later, but I'm just going to mention in the soil monitoring law some of the areas, well, the core sections of it and where living labs can really contribute. So it officially came into force in December of last year. Here's a link to the actual document, which is not a bad idea to become friends with if you're applying for this call. And okay, next slide. Thanks for sharing the link in the chat as well. And I also want to just point to a engagement event that we did last year. It was before the law was actually adopted, but it was quite a high level event with people from DG Agri and others that I rewatched some of it in preparation for this, and it's quite useful, relevant, inspiring. So if you feel like it could be a good resource, then check out on YouTube the recording from this thematic engagement event on the soil monitoring law. Okay, next. So yes, in these so-called recitals at the beginning, they really do specifically refer to living labs. And first, there's a sort of commitment or link at that and maybe let me back up and say that we're really looking at how member states will be trying to implement this and write it into their own national laws. So they sort of make this commitment to funding, like mostly through the mission soil. So why we're all here today, and in this recitals 13 and 55 in that document. But also here I included the text that is worth reading, that member states should be required to closely monitor the impact of the support for soil health and soil resilience, taking into account new knowledge from research and innovation. Valuable contributions are expected in this respect from the EU mission, yeah, soil deal for Europe, and in particular its living labs and activities to support soil monitoring, soil education, and citizen engagement. So this is really an explicit call to action for all of the living labs. Next slide. The the timeline, so it's yeah, adopted last year, and then there's 3-year period where it transposition into the national law at member state level before the first monitoring and assessment of in 2030 to 2031. And then there's a period of there's going to be an important review 2033 to see if maybe there's some changes, some things that aren't working well or what's going well and not. And then every 4 years up to 2050 or 2048, 49 at least, there's these recurring monitoring and assessments. So, okay. And getting into a little bit of detail, I think most important probably this is being aware of and aligning proposals, especially for those who are starting the process or looking at the 2027 proposals, that they really expect this to reference in the soil monitoring law these annexes that spell out the yeah key aspects of soil health and what they expect to be measured, and these thresholds for each descriptor here. And on the next slide, it says that where to find them in this document. So Annex 1 has these soil descriptors and criteria for healthy soil conditions, and whereas Annex 2 is really the more detailed methodologies, also the sampling points that they that they expect to get from around the EU and the reference methodology per soil descriptor. So important information from a technical aspect to be aware of and to use as a reference in designing some of the detailed approaches. Okay, next slide. So I'll go. The next are sort of sections of that are most relevant in the law that there's a big, yeah, that they stress the importance of this soil health data and kind of building on the EU Soil Observatory and some other soil use, like most used soil databases. They plan to continue that in building a digital soil health data portal, and that's a place where contributions from living labs are certainly foreseen. Communication of this data to landowners, land managers, and then also physical soil archives. So there's going to be funding and for this, but I think it needs to be assessed by each member state how they're going to do it. Okay, next slide. So supporting also landowners and managers, as was mentioned, to improve soil health and resilience by providing access to advice and training, promoting awareness on cost and benefits, especially, thinking longer than the 2, 3 years ahead, and the promoting research and innovation. So this is what's imagined that soil health living labs will be able to provide a lot of this, yeah, access to these types of resources and to be involved in the process. Next slide. So very briefly, encourage for maybe for those where it's relevant, the land take mitigation principles is a point where they focus a lot on in this section on the soil monitoring law. So if you think that it's relevant in the call and in your area, then these are opportunities to emphasize or to think about whether this could be relevant. And next slide. Similarly, for contaminated sites, this is planned to come a little bit later in the kind of timeline, but they do, once they have, let's say, the monitoring framework and a little bit of the benchmark set up, then they want to apply those in identifying and then coming up with plans and a register of contaminated sites. And these are also there are specific annexes for these. But that's coming a little bit later and just something I want to point to be aware of. So next slide. So just to sum up, and I believe this is my last slide, that this soil monitoring law is a big step forward and an opportunity for, yeah, improved soil health, I should have written, in Europe. And there's really a relevance and importance of aligning your proposals with the implementation timeline, the soil descriptors and methodologies, and demonstrating as specific as possible how you're going to contribute to that. That will certainly strengthen the proposal, and that this monitoring data is really needed. It's lacking for sure in certain areas, certain areas of measurement, but also regions. So it's very, yeah, I guess it varies a lot across Europe, and there are huge opportunities to try and fill these gaps where living labs can contribute. So I think I'll stop there and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you very much, Taylor, for a very informative presentation. And now let's continue with our next speaker, Sergio Pellegrini, who will talk about soil-related approaches in managed and natural, semi-natural forest areas. Please, Sergio, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Kinga. Good afternoon, everyone. In this presentation, I will focus on how second stage proposal can address soil-related aspects in forest area in a clear, I hope, and coherent way, both in managed forests and in natural or semi-natural contexts. In particular, I will look how to connect problem definition, site selection, living lab design, monitoring, governance, and expected impact. According to our mission SOIL call, we can say we know that in Europe more than 90% of forests are managed forest used for timber production, habitat management, and recreation activities. And they play an important role in supporting a sustainable forest bioeconomy. By contrast, only about 5–10% of Europe forests are unmanaged or natural, mainly located in national park or nature reserves. The main area of this kind of forest are found are in Scandinavia and the mountain region of East and Southeastern Europe, particularly in the Carpathian and the Balkans. Next slide, please. Oh, okay, this is one. What about forest soils? Why forest soils? And why living labs? And why now? Forest soils, we all know that underpin key ecosystem services. For example, biomass production, or the same tree growth, biodiversity, carbon storage, nutrient cycles, and water flow regulation. Yet these functions are increasingly threatened by climate change, degradation phenomena like erosion, salinization, compaction, contamination, or organic matter decline, and unsustainable management practices. In this context, living labs help or should help to bridge science and practices by co-designing and testing solutions with relevant stakeholders. Healthy forests are therefore essential in order to maintain or obtain resilient ecosystems, sustainable management of forest soil, and climate and biodiversity goals. The next one, please. The mission soil objectives, as explained by Tyler before, are not a checklist. The soil mission, in fact, provides a strategic framework for proposal design. Each living lab should clearly identify the objectives it addresses, and demonstrate a coherent pathway from soil threat to intervention, adopting indicators, evidence, and use of results. For forest soils, key objectives often include preventing soil erosion, soil water erosion mainly, preventing soil compaction, conserving or increasing the soil organic carbon stock, reducing erosion, and maintaining all soil function, while at the same time promoting the soil literacy among the European citizens. The next one. Our two-stage call of interest in the first phase saw the presentation of 18 proposals, if I'm correct. And what I have to say, that it's important to distinguish between managed forest and natural or semi-natural forest, because they play or may play different roles in a proposal. The managed forests are often used to test and improve the management practices, while natural and semi-natural lands, forests, can provide reference value, reference conditions, so supporting the study of soil resilience and the ecosystem functioning. This distinction influences site selection, the stakeholders' involvement, the monitoring, and the expected outcomes. As a consequence, the proposal should clearly explain the role of each forest context. The next one. So, to define the soil health challenge, the proposal should build on existing knowledge, not starting from zero. On existing knowledge, so starting on existing data and solution developed through national monitoring systems and also previous Horizon Europe projects, including mission soil initiatives. For this specific mission soil topic, applicants should also consider existing mission soil living labs in forest landscapes, because the call explicitly asks for a new project to expand and complement the network that already exists and has been established under the previous mission soil calls. Anyway, the proposal should not duplicate existing living labs, but explain how it expands, complements, or connects with them, with the existing one. The next one. Oh, in this slide illustrates an example, a simple example related to one of the threats that occur on forest soil, the soil compaction. This slide show how a living lab proposal should link a specific soil threat to measurable outcomes. In this case, soil compaction is obviously located in intensively managed forest, leads to targeted intervention, stakeholder involvement, and selection of relevant indicators. The expected results are improved soil condition and better forest growth and regeneration. The key message is that the logic from the problem to impact should be clear and measurable. The next. living lab size that should be from 10 to 20 for each living lab should be selected for their relevance to the obviously to the identified single soil threat, to the particular forest context, and to the learning potential, and not simply because these sites are easily accessible. So stakeholders should be chosen on the basis of their role in understanding the problem, implementing the solutions, and using the results. A successful living lab, in fact, depends on matching the right site and the right actors. The next. From soil threat to intervention. Intervention obviously should be related to the soil threat identified in each living lab. And depending on the challenge, actions may address, for example, erosion, compaction as that previously, organic matter decline, or post-disturbance plant recovery. The key point is that the proposed practices should be justified by the site conditions and by the expected improvements in soil health. To this aim, the applicants should also verify the relevant national and regional legal frameworks. I don't know in the rest of Europe, but in Italy, for example, forestry management is regulated through national legislation, and not only, as well as by regional forestry regulation. And are these regional regulation which define and allow the intervention permitted according to the forest type and plant cover. The next one. So indicators for carry out all these activity are crucial. Are crucial because they help to demonstrate the effectiveness of living lab activities. Proposal should select a limited set of relevant and obviously measurable indicators. In premise, among the ones indicated by the soil monitoring law. Additional indicators may be used to complement the assessment and provide further information on soil condition. Moreover, a robust monitoring plan should include a baseline, and not only should foresee an appropriate sampling design and quality procedures, ensuring that the project generates credible and comparable data evidence. You can move. In living lab, co-creation is not an option. And should be an ongoing process and not a one-time only consultation. A credible living lab require clear roles, share decision making, and regular engagement of stakeholders. The proposal should also explain how the obtained feedback will be used and how governance will support effective implementation of the results. The next one. So about evidence generation. Generating credible evidence is a core function of a living lab. A proposal should clearly explain how the effects of intervention will be assessed. For example, using appropriate comparisons over time or between different management approaches. Monitoring data combined with the stakeholder feedback in this way should provide evidence of what works, under which conditions, and with what kind of limitation. The next. So the slide, the impact pathway from measurement to policy and practice, I would like to underline that living labs should not only generate data and research results, but also produce ready-to-use knowledge for land managers, policymakers, promote the uptake of the tested solutions, and contribute to more effective soil health policies. A proposal should clearly identify target users and explain how the project outcomes will support decision-making as well as the uptake and replication beyond the living lab sites. The next one. We are almost at the end. As a proposal, before submission, applicant have to verify that the proposal present a clear logic, a credible approach, and a strong impact pathway. All these elements are essential for a convincing proposal. The next time. We are at the end, so I thank you very much for your attention and good luck with the preparation of the final proposal.
Thank you so much, Sergio, and thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. And we continue with the next speaker. So Nikolaos Toumasis from Cranfield University. He will focus in his presentation on Alpine and Atlantic biogeographical regions. So please, Nikolaos, go ahead. Thank you.
Many thanks, Kinga, for the introduction. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nikolaos, and I want to walk you through something central to the SOILL-Stepup work, and is how soil management has to change depending on where in Europe you are studying, specifically comparing the Alpine biogeographical region with the Atlantic biogeographical region. And the image we have here is a forest floor layered with some leaf litters and exposed roots, and is a fitting starting point. It's a reminder that soil is not one thing, it behaves differently under different skies, and our interventions need to follow that logic. Next slide, please. So why these two regions specifically out of the 11 that exist across the European Union? Because they sit at almost opposite ends of the ecological spectrum, and that contrast is generally instructive for the mission soil as a whole. And the map on the right shows the European Union's 11 official biogeographical regions as defined in 2016, and each one shaded in its own color for clarity. And the Alpine region runs through the high mountain chains, the Alps themselves, the Carpathians, the Pyrenees, and the Atlantic region, shaded here in blue, wraps around the northwestern seaboard with Ireland, the UK, Brittany, all the Atlantic coastal fringe. In the Alpine case, we're dealing with steep slopes, shallow soils, and high erosion sensitivity. And in the Atlantic case, the defining pressure is rainfall, producing waterlogging and constant organic matter turnover. And the evidence behind today's talk is drawn from pan-European erosion and resilience analysis, and it points consistently to one conclusion, that there is no single continent-wide recipe for soil management, and all the region-specific approaches are not a nicety, they're a necessity. Next slide, please. So here, let's start here with the mountains, where conditions are arguably the most demanding anywhere on the continent. And the map you see here is taken from the EU strategy for the Alpine region, shows three overlapping boundaries: the red Alpine space, the blue usual microregion, and the green area governed by the Alpine Convention, and three governmental layers are touching the same soil, often with different priorities. But what characterizes that soil itself? First is the low soil development with cold temperatures, slow pedogenesis right down, and erosion, which keeps rejuvenating the surface before a mature profile ever has the chance to form. And second is that humus accumulates from slow litter decomposition, and these often surprise people the first time they hear it. And you get generally acid soils, even where the underlying bedrock is limestone. Third is the strong altitudinal gradients, which create some microzones, shifting moisture, organic matter, and vegetation cover across just a few hundred meters of elevation change. And the practical implication for our living labs are that interventions need to be slope adapted, low disturbance, and anchored by vegetation rather than imposed against it. Next slide, please. So I want to flag here something because the pressures listed with chronic waterlogging, leaching, the drainage stress, the organic matter depletion under intensive grasslands, and read at first glance like an Atlantic profile, but that's deliberate. At lower alpine elevations in the valley floors and foothill grasslands, you generally do get Atlantic-style hydrology layered on top of mountain dynamics. And the two maps on the right track the spatial distribution of soil organic matter comparing 2009 and 2018. And notice that the color shift with the 2018 panel is visibly greener and more yellow across a much wider footprint, meaning organic matter has measurably increased over that decade in many years, even as vulnerability to compaction and drainage stress, and has intensified alongside it. Also with rising carbon, we have also rising fragility, and that's why the living lab priorities here are drainage innovation, soil organic matter enhancement, and hydrological modeling generally. Next slide, please. So it's about the alpine technical approaches, and so what do we actually do? This slide splits the alpine toolkit into two families. On the left, with erosion, we have the erosion control with slope stabilization through terracing, contouring, and geotextiles. And also have afforestation and reforestation to rebuild canopy interception and root reinforcement. And also we can check dams and sediment traps placed directly in gullies, and some vegetative buffer streams and bioengineering for slope recovery. On the right, we have water and runoff management with contour-aligned drainage to reduce flow velocity. And we have deliberate routing of snow melt, so it doesn't concentrate into destructive pulses. Also, we have terraced retention for slope farming and some stabilized steam banks and combining vegetation with rock armoring. And sometimes we see high altitude wetland restoration to buffer peak flows before they reach the valley. And what matter here is sequencing it correctly against its slope. Yes, next slide, please. Soil health in the Alps doesn't only need a probe in the ground, but diversity itself is a strong proxy. This is the cover here of the VVS European Alpine Program brochure, and it captures the scale involved, more than 7,000 plant species, many endemic to the region. And also the soil-dependent habitats are mountain forests, alpine grasslands, and what's called nival and rock vegetation. And it's also the sparse life surviving right at the snow line. We're seeing declines sometimes in semi-natural grasslands driven by intensification in some valleys and abandonment in others. And for our living labs indicator species, we're focused more in alpine and grassland flora and can flag sometimes soil condition before a chemical test would. Next, please. Here is the key soil characteristics of Atlantic regions. And now let's shift entirely to the Atlantic region. The map here drawn from a peer-reviewed source cited below by Doi outlines the Atlantic biogeographical footprint along the western seaboard, including the island territories. And six characteristics define these soils, and I'll move through them briskly. We have high soil moisture regimes from persistent rainfall, keeping the profile saturated. Also, leaching-prone profiles, losing nitrates and base cations under high precipitation. We have acidic soil conditions here from constant weathering and organic rich surface horizon. And this is good for structure, but sometimes raising compaction risk. And compaction susceptibility itself, since a wet ground under intensive use degrades, I think, far more easily than dry ground. And we have also hydrological sensitivity. And these fast swings between saturation and runoff. And if you take one phrase from this slide, is this one, that Atlantic soils are reactive soils. So next slide, please. The photograph here is on the right is in a coastal grassland edge, and it summarizes where several Atlantic pressures converge. And the core pressures are high rainfall, driving waterlogging, leaching, and nutrient dilution. Organic matter-rich soils nonetheless are vulnerable to compaction and drainage failure. And also in coastal and lowland zones, specifically, we have salinization, some peatland degradation, and also the compounding effect of intensive grassland use. But structurally, what we see is decline from repeated wetting and drying, and the soil fatigues sometimes over time. And for our living labs here, the priorities are again drainage innovation, soil organic matters enhancement, and hydrological modeling. And the same three priorities that emerged at the lower alpine elevations. Next, please. So this is, I think, the single most important figure in the entire presentation. So I want to give it proper attention and not to rush through it, because these maps classify European soils into three resilience zones by pH. We have acidic stress shown in blue, alkaline stress in orange, and optimal in green. And the left-hand maps is in 2009, and the right-hand is 2018. Roughly is 1 decade apart. And compare them directly side by side. By 2018, we have the blue acidic stress zone has expanded noticeably, particularly across the northern and northwest belt, and that overlaps substantially with our Atlantic region, as well as the wetter margins of the alpine zone. Now, the green optimal zone has held up reasonably well across central Europe, but it has visibly contracted at the edges over that same window. This is not a subtle trend, and I want to be direct about that. Over roughly 1 decade, a meaningful share of European soil moved out of chemical equilibrium and into acidic stress. And this is precisely the kind of shift that the EU soil monitoring law was designed to catch earlier, as discussed earlier. And it's exactly the kind of trend that our living labs are positioned to track on the ground in real time rather than retrospectively. So next slide, please. This slide gives a quick overview of main soil drainage approaches. So the images on the right show the drainage being laid in the field. And we organize the approach in 3 tiers: drainage and infiltration management, with systems like subsurface systems, like tile, like mold drains, and surface measures like grassed waterways and shallow ditches. And these help move excess water safely off fields. And practices here like control traffic farming and some raised beds for horticulture can reduce compaction, and permeable field margins can support also infiltration. Water retention and soil organic matter cover cropping. We have some organic amendments and reduced tillage, which strengthen the soil structure. And again, we have some pasture diversification for deeper rooting, improving also stability. And summarized in the panel on the right, resilience to high rainfall specifically for Atlantic regions use some infiltration basins and riparian buffer zones and ongoing structure monitoring across the pH. But sometimes we investigate also conductivity and soil organic matter to anticipate the saturation risks. So next slide, please. Let's bring it's the cross-regional insights, and let's bring the 2 regions together. And the maps on the right track soil degradation intensity, the percentage of soil loss per country, comparing 2001 and 2012. The pattern across the decade is persistent. Geographically concentrated loss is broadly the same northwestern belt in both years, which tell us this is a structural and not a one-off event. But across both regions, resilience improves through different mechanisms, with afforestation and vegetation recovery in the Alps, and organic matter accumulation and drainage improvement in the Atlantic. But both converge on natural-based solutions as the common thread. And we have some critically thresholds exist. Some small land use changes can trigger disproportionately large erosion responses, and that non-linearity is exactly why region-specific strategies, rather than one continental template, are essential to the mission soil objectives. Next slide, please. Here we have this table comparing the Alpine and Atlantic, the regional comparison, and is in effect this table a summary of everything we have covered so far, organized side by side. We have the location with Central and Southern Europe for the Alps, the Northwestern Europe for the Atlantic zone, and we have also different climates, cold with heavy snow melt against mild and wet year-round, and some main soil risks, erosion and slope instability on the one side, waterlogging and soil organic matter depletion on the other. And the technical approaches column reflects exactly what we walked through with terracing, with afforestation and bioengineering for the Alps, and also with the cover crops and soil organic matter amendments for the Atlantic. So biodiversity differs sharply too. Over 7,000 plant species we have in the Alps against peatland and high carbon stock coastal habitats in the Atlantic. And the governance frameworks also differ. The Alpine Convention and the European Union Habitats Directive at one side, and the Water Framework Directive and Natura 2000 on the other. Though notably the European Union Soil Monitoring Law now applies across both, as my colleague Tyler referred previously. So I encourage you to treat this table as a working reference as you design your own Living Lab proposals. Next slide, please. So let's turn now to the policy instrument that ties all of this together into a single regulatory framework. And it's adopted in 2024, the EU Soil Monitoring Law. And for our Living Labs, this presents a direct opportunity rather than simply compliance burden, because Living Labs can serve as data contributors and implementation pilots. So for these national systems, we're generating region-specific baselines, and on the right you can see how this plays out regionally in practice. In the Alps, we have monitoring focusing more in erosion risks and thresholds, also on steep slopes, and also in changes in soil organic matter tracking across the altitude gradients, and also in the compaction from grazing pressure. And in the Atlantic, the emphasis shifts to the waterlogging frequency, the peatland carbon stocks and drainage monitoring, and soil organic matter dynamics is under intensive glacial systems, and also compaction mapping sometimes from heavy machinery is also a key priority. So next slide, please. Here, the slide gives a quick overview. It's what does a strong Living Lab application look like? So practically speaking, what separates a strong application from an average one? There are four things that they're laid out here. We have our four pillars. The first, region-specific evidence, which demonstrates the real understanding of the field data, the maps and peer-reviewed sources. And also second, we have some tailored interventions so that your proposed practices are scientifically matched to your region, with erosion and slope management if you are Alpine Living Lab, and drainage and soil organic matter enhancement if you are Atlantic. The third thing is monitoring and soil health indicators. And also the fourth is co-creation and scalability, which demonstrate some genuine collaboration with farmers, foresters, and local authorities. Next slide, please. So zooming out to the governance layer itself, the Alpine Convention emphasizes sustainable development and soil protection directly. And the EU Habitats Directive lists 100 Annex 1 habitats within the Alpine region, including two that are exclusively to it, with permanent glaciers and the alpine forests of Larix decidua and Pinus sembra. And in both cases, Living Labs and Lighthouses function as implementation accelerators are for these existing policies. So the panel on the right distills what this means practically for soil applicants in order to demonstrate the region-specific pressures and tailor interventions ground also to your case in biogeographical evidence, and to show how your Living Lab can co-create solutions and monitor soil functions, and also to engage the local actors. So next slide, this is my final slide. So to conclude, In alpine regions, we prioritize the erosion control, the slope stabilization, and water routing. And in Atlantic regions, we prioritize drainage, organic matter enhancement, and water retention. And across both, we let resilience metrics, resistance, recovery, and threshold behavior, and guide where you intervene, because the evidence is unambiguous with targeted region-specific technical approaches and outperform generic ones. So these principles are what we hope will strengthen the soil catalog, and also living lab practice is going forward. So thank you so much for your attention, and I look forward to your questions in the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nikolaos, for your very technical and detailed presentation. And before we move to our final presentation, I would like to remind to all our participants that we can use the chat during the feel free to write it is and some information about how SOIL can support applicants. And I want to give a floor to Karen. So please go ahead.
Yep, I'm not sure. I think that might have broke up a little bit for some people, but Kinga just mentioned, I'm sure a lot of people have questions now, so feel free to put them into the chat box, because we will do a Q&A session after my piece now. Thank you very much. I'm going to finish this part of the webinar now with 4 practical tips on how applicants can work with SOIL and make use of the support available. So just moving swiftly on to the first tip. Okay, so the first tip here is to learn from recurring weaknesses identified in previous proposal evaluations. So the recurrent challenges shown on the slide were identified through an in-depth analysis by REA, or the European Research Executive Agency, basically of proposal performance in previous evaluations. These provide useful practical lessons when preparing your proposals. So one common challenge is that proposals refer to a living lab but do not clearly show what makes the approach genuine. So explain how co-creation will work, where solutions will be tested in real-world conditions, and how stakeholders will take part in decisions rather than simply being consulted. A second challenge is that a weak connection between objectives, work packages, activities, deliverables, and expected impacts. An evaluator should really be able to follow a clear line from the challenge you have identified through the work you will carry out to the change you expect to achieve. Multi-actor collaboration also needs to be meaningful. Be clear about who will be involved, why they are needed, and how land managers, researchers, practitioners, policy actors, and other stakeholders will contribute throughout the project. And finally, address long-term sustainability from the outset. Explain how the Living Lab will continue to create value, maintain its community, and support uptake beyond the funded project. Yep, so we can move on to tip 2 now. And the second tip here is to really make use of the SOIL support ecosystem. The services shown here cover different applicant needs, including webinars, resources, the SOIL Hub, Help Desk, and FAQ. And for future SOIL Living Lab topics, mentoring, coaching, and matchmaking as well. Yeah, we can move on, and I'll go into them a little bit more in detail. Okay, so first we have mentors and coaching. For future Mission SOIL Living Lab topics, national mentors will provide coaching in local languages and guide applicants through the process. The role is obviously not to write the proposal, but to help the teams interpret expectations, test the strength of their Living Lab design, and identify areas that need further development. And details of the mentors and the support available will also be shared through SOIL channels. And we can move on to the next one. Yep, so webinars are really another important source of support. The first webinar here for the 2026 call was delivered with DG Agri and REA. It covered the funding opportunities, practical proposal guidance. I'm sure many was on, but if anyone wants to look back at that, the recordings and materials are available through the SOIL Hub, so applicants can return to them while developing proposals. And if we move on to the next one, I will show further webinars will respond to applicant needs and future mission SOIL topics. So be sure to follow SOIL and sign up for the newsletter so that you receive updates on new sessions, materials, and opportunities. Yeah, and we can move on to some matchmaking now. This is really, I guess, more based at future calls, but the SOIL matchmaking platform will support consortium building. Applicants will be able to identify potential partners and find proposals they may be able to join or make their own expertise and project interests available. So yeah, when considering a potential partner, think about that as well. Yeah, and moving on now to resources. So yeah, the SOIL Knowledge Repository really brings together practical resources to strengthen different parts of a proposal. They include guidelines and recommendations, examples and best practices from existing soil health living labs and lighthouses, fact sheets on funding topics and land use types, and the pathway for a competitive proposal. And you can, these are at your availability if you wish to use them, and we've got the resources cited there as well. We move on now to the help desk. So where you have a specific question, the FAQ and help desk provide a direct route to the support. The FAQ answers recurring questions on mission soil living lab topics and proposal development. The help desk is accessible through the SOIL Hub, and the help desk guidelines explain how to submit a question. So check the call documents and existing FAQ first. Where clarification is still needed, make the question as precise as possible and include the relevant topic or proposal section there as well. And moving on to engagement events. Yeah, this is just to say that we will organise thematic and biogeographical events during 2026 and 2027. I think this was covered previously as well, but upcoming events will be published through the SOIL website and hub. Moving on now to tip 3. So my third tip would really be to use the wider guidance available alongside SOIL's support services. So we have the Mission SOIL Implementation Plan. It's a key reference for understanding the mission objectives, the principles of living labs, and the impacts projects are expected to contribute to. Applicants should also use the official call documents and REA guidance, including practical advice on developing Horizon Europe projects. And then for more background on the Living Lab approach, the ENOL booklet shown here explains its origins, development, and future perspectives. The knowledge repository also includes proposal-related FAQs and guidance as well. And then we will just move on to the final tip of the day. So tip 4 is to plan and budget realistically for engagement with SOIL. The final 2 slides translate the expected online and in-person activities into practical resource planning. For online activities, applicants need to allow sufficient personnel time. At project start, the Living Lab manager will need to time for onboarding and data provision with further input required on an ad hoc basis. You know, these tasks may look small individually, but together they really require real staff time. So make sure responsibilities are allocated and the necessary personnel effort is included in the budget as well. And then we can just finally move on to the plan and budget for SOIL engagement. Yep, so this piece is more about in-person activities. So the same planning principle applies to in-person activities, where both personnel time and travel costs may be required. The annual engagement event is expected to involve Living Lab manager or other appointed representative. So applicants should account for attendance time and travel to an EU location as well. We also have the boot camp training there. It's expected annually and may last 1 or 2 days with at least one person attending from each Living Lab or lighthouse. We also have the site visits, which will take place on an ad hoc basis. And then knowledge exchange sessions are still to be confirmed, but they may involve several days at European or international level as well. So it's sensible to include an indicative allowance for travel or staff participation. I guess the overall message here is that engagement with soil, it's really important. It supports learning, visibility, peer exchange, and the long-term development of your living lab as well. So your proposal should include enough time for that. Yeah, so that concludes my practical tips. And we can move swiftly on now to the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Karen. So yes, we are now in the point of the Q&A session. For the moment, I can't see any questions in the chat. So in the meantime, maybe some question will show up. I would like to inform you that in the chat, we provide for you all the links to the materials that we were speaking about during the presentations. Also, I would like to inform you that if you're gonna have any questions in the future, you can connect with the mentors. So you can visit our webpage and search the mentors via countries. And also you can use our help desk. And yes, we have one of the questions in the chat. I was wondering, so I will read it out loud. So I would like to also say to all the speakers to help and with answering the questions. So how long does it take to validate the living lab once it's registered? So maybe our friends from Enol can take this question.
Yes, I was checking now the email. I was wondering, well, to validate the living labs once it's registered, I was wondering if the participants is referring to the Soil Hub, is registered on the Soil Hub or somewhere else, because if it's on the Soil Hub, the process that we register the Mission Soil Living Labs when they the project has won and they have signed the grant agreement. But now is also possible for the Living Labs not funded through the specific topics to register on the Soil Hub and go through the monitoring and evaluation to be labeled according to the soil framework. So yeah, maybe I don't know if Enriquez then wants to clarify a little bit more the question.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is another question: are the mentors technical expert directly on soil or to support the proposal writing? So I don't know if Kinga, you wanna respond?
Yeah, I can explain very briefly about the mentors. So the mentors are both the experts in the soil, and also they are representative of national contact points. So they can also support you in writing your proposals. So you can check on the webpage, and if you are more interested in the help in soil-related questions, you can connect with the expert. Or with if you need some help with writing your proposal, you can connect with the representative of national contact points that they are especially working in mission soil. So I think that's all from my side, and we have one more about Living Lab from a funded project, and I have tried to register in the Soil Health Living Lab and Lighthouse community to be displayed on the soil map. So I think, Dolinda, you can take this one.
Yes, no, I understand a little bit better. So it's on the soil map. Indeed, there is a process for so there is a process to register external living lab, not funded through the specific topics, the ones presented now in the presentation. And the process, I mean, I cannot explain it in details now, but eventually we can communicate through the help desk on how the process is managed. But there is a process so that people can register and then appear on the map once they have fulfilled the monitoring and assessment. The living labs that are funded through the specific topics of the mission soil to create soil health living labs. So the ones presented today, plus the one that were available in the previous year under the mission soil. In that case, those we take the responsibility to register ourselves, these living labs. So I suggest eventually to reach out to the help desk. I guess the link was sent in the chat. We can resend it in case people have our experiences problem in registering their own living labs on the help desk.
Okay, and one more question. Is the facility of proposal restricted only to European students?
So I don't think there is a restriction on this. No, there is no restriction on this point. There is just a restriction of the member states, but not and the associated countries, but not European students or not.
Okay, thank you, Delinda, so much for all the answers. If there are not any questions or... Okay, we have one more from Q&A. I would read it out loud. So, hi, my name is Gabor Kirali from AKI Hungary. There are more and more claims that the use of AI tools has industrialized the process of writing proposal. Do the evaluators have anything in their hands to filter out proposals that were made by AI?
So I don't know if Aurora wanna take this.
Yes, I can answer to that one. Sorry, my camera is not working, unfortunately. So basically, the commission is okay with the use of AI. Of course, you need to explicitly reference that you have used AI for specific part of your proposal. But I mean, your proposal will not be evaluated on if you used AI or not, but of course more on the specific evaluation criteria of excellence, impact, and implementation. So I would say just focus on writing the best proposal you could be writing on these specific sections. But if and when the AI is used, maybe it's better to just explicitly mention it.
Okay, thank you, Aurora, so much. And the last one, because we are running out of the time. So are you into providing online courses? So our previous webinars are already available on the web page. And also you can access the Soil Hub where we have all the knowledge repository and some useful materials. And also we have the help center, which is available to support all of you. And if anyone wants to add something about this question, please feel free.
Yeah, we will continue next year in providing new webinars and matchmaking events, also to facilitate consortia creation. So if you subscribe eventually to the newsletter of SOIL, you can receive news on when the next event will be, in the next webinar will be organized.
Okay, thank you so much, Dolinda, and we can continue. So it's just the final of the our webinar. So some conclusions. Don't forget about it's everyone was speaking about this already a few times during the webinar. So the deadlines. The first is in September for the calls for 2027 is in the opening in February and closing the first stage in April. And we can move to the next slide. Yeah, this is already what I said. And then here from 2027, we also gonna organize webinars and sessions dedicated to this call topics. And the last one, if you have any questions, please, you can use the SOIL Hub and search for the partners, access to the Living Lab Atlas. You can check our tools, best practices, and knowledge, and also connect with the SOIL experts via help desk. And you can check about all the events and engagement events organized by different stakeholders and also by our SOILL-Stepup project. And next slide. So we would like to ask you to share your feedback with us. So you can scan the QR code on the screen, or you can use the link which will be provided in the chat. And it takes only 2 minutes to complete the short feedback survey. And it really helps us improve our next webinars and trainings and presentations for the applicants. And next one, I think this is the last one. So I would like to say thank you to all the participants for staying with us. And also I wanted to say big thank you to all the speakers and all colleagues and partners from the SOIL project who were involved in organizing this webinar, especially to colleagues from European Network of Living Labs, from Trust IT Services, from CREA, from Krakow Technology Park, and from Climate Kick. And I would wanted to wish you a wonderful afternoon and good luck with your proposals. And I hope see you on the next webinar. So thank you so much.